And so, you know, just to remember Acts 16, Paul and Silas were there. They cast the demon out of this woman. They got thrown in jail, but through it all, the jailer became a Christian and was baptized and everything. And so then Paul and Silas, you know, that's what it costs to get people the gospel. Some people have to pay. And Paul talks about that in Colossians, I think it is, first chapter, Colossians 1:24, but I just didn't see it. He says, I rejoice in what was suffered for you, and I fill up in my flesh what's still lacking in regard to Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, which is the church. So, you know, that just means that some people wonder about that because they think it's saying that Christ didn't suffer enough. More people have to suffer to pay for our sins. No, Christ suffered to pay for our sins. What he did was enough, once for all. But to get that message to other people, others have to suffer. There's just no other way around it. You go into foreign countries or even in America and preach and stuff, you're going to get some kind of resistance, and sometimes it could be dangerous. You know, they attack you, they beat you up. That's what happened. They were beaten badly and thrown in jail and put in stocks and everything, but you know, it was, God used it to win that jailer and so forth. So, you know, that's what Paul means in Colossians 1:24 when he says he fills up in his body the suffering of Christ. He's still suffering in order to get the gospel, and that's been happening for 2,000 years. But anyway, then they go back to the house of Lydia, this woman who was the first convert in Europe, and they encourage the new Christians there, and then they move on. And so it says in chapter 17, verse 1, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica. People say Thessalonica, but I think the actual way to say it is Thessalonica. It's Greek. And so, you know, if you look at the Bible maps, you can see these towns. They went about, I think it's about 30 miles over to Amphipolis. And then they just kept going to Apollonia, which is another, what I read was about 27 more miles or something. Then they came to Thessalonica, which is 62 miles west of where they were there in Philippi. So
that must have taken days.
Yeah, you just walk, you know. So it took, and the thing is, they just kept going through those first two towns. So it seems like maybe they didn't have a synagogue, or it just didn't seem like there was anywhere to kind of preach the gospel there, so they kept going. And then they came to Thessalonica, which is its own kind of like province, you know, and it's its own region there, just north of Greece. And so there was a synagogue there. So verse 2 says, as his custom was, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I'm proclaiming to you is the Messiah, he said. Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of the God-fearing Greeks and not a few prominent women. And so, you know, this was their way of working. They go into that synagogue and you know, because that's the best place to start off, because those people already know about the God of Israel and about the Messiah coming and so forth. And so it says that he was there 3 Sabbath days, so 3 Saturdays in a row. He reasoned with them. And I want to talk about that in a minute, but I want you to see verse 3 says he was explaining and proving that the Christ had to suffer and rise from the dead. And what it says in like the Greek is that he laid out for them kind of the prophecies of the Old Testament, the Tanakh, telling about Messiah having to suffer. And then he talked about how Jesus fulfilled them. See, when he explained and proved that Christ had to suffer and rise from the dead, that's how he did it. He said, see, in the Old Testament it said he was going to suffer. And then Jesus of Nazareth, this is how he suffered. So he laid it out so they could see. That's what he always did. He became an expert at, you know, showing about Messiah and showing that Yeshua, that Jesus was the Messiah. He fulfilled the prophecies. And he said, this Jesus or Yeshua that I'm proclaiming to you is the Messiah. So that was always his message. Jesus is the Messiah. And so verse 4 says, some of the Jews were persuaded, and they joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and not a few prominent women. And remember, in every synagogue, you had the real Jews, and then you had what's called the proselytes, which are Gentiles who convert to Judaism. So if it's a man, he has to go, to be a proselyte, he has to be circumcised and everything. He has to go all the way. But you also have a lot of people who are called God-fearers. And so that's why it says that a large number of God-fearing Greeks believed. So you see, you have the Jewish synagogue with Jews, proselytes, and God-fearers. So you had a large number of God-fearers. So actually, you'd have fewer Jews than Gentiles, probably, in these synagogues. But these would be people who wanted to join with the Jews and learn about their religion. They liked the Jewish religion. And there's not a few prominent women. What I read about this said that Macedonia, this is still a part of Macedonia, and the women there were more independent than a lot of women in the ancient world. And so you had a lot of prominent women there. So they're like, wealthy, or their husbands are important or whatever. And they go to the Jewish synagogue. So they're people that got influence, and they're women that are, independent minded. And so I wanted to call your attention to two words here. The first one is verse 2, where it says he reasoned in the synagogue. And what, you got a different version there, verse 2, that says something different? My NIV says he reasoned.
He reasoned with them by the scriptures.
The custom was Paul went into the synagogue and the Sabbath days. Yeah, he reasoned.
Okay, that word, see, I got the Greek here. You can look up the Greek, because you remember it's written in Greek, right? The New Testament was written in Greek. So the word is diolegomai. Diolegomai. So it's where we get our word dialogue. Dialogue. Now, dia means two in Greek. Dia. And logos means the word. Jesus is the logos, but they use logos for lots of stuff. The word, the study of, like biologos, biology. Life, the study of living things, right? So diolegomai means two-way conversation kind of thing. Two people talking. That's a dialogue, right? So I say something, you say something. I say something, you say something. So it's a two-way street. So Paul went in there and he reasoned with them. And you'll see that through in the book of Acts, you'll see it a lot. And if you look up the Greek, a lot of times you'll see words like, diolegomai, he dialogued, he reasoned, he debated, he argued, he persuaded. You'll see that. And so that's what we got to do with non-Christians. We dialogue with them. We tell them stuff, they argue with us, they ask questions, we talk to them, explain them. It's a dialogue. And so we got to dialogue with people and let them say their side. And one of the things you want to do if you're trying to witness to somebody and they say, well, that's ridiculous, I don't believe that stuff, then do a dialogue thing. It's a good strategy to go, well, what do you believe? And because what they want, for a lot of times they'll try to put you on the spot. So do you believe that homosexuality is wrong? That two men can't be married? Show us why that. Well, that's wrong. Nowadays we all believe in that. We've accepted that. We're more modern now. We're more progressive now. How come you don't believe that? And things like that. They'll attack you. The church teaches, that two men can't be married. Why are you so homophobic? Why don't you love people? Why don't you accept them for who they are? So they want to put it on you. And so a lot of Christians just say, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be in an argument and I don't want to have somebody put me on the spot or embarrass me or something like that. So they don't say anything. But one thing you can do is this dialogue idea. You can go, well, you tell me why you believe it's good. And that is a good strategy because then you're putting the burden back on them and they're on the spot. So what you are saying there is what everybody says nowadays. Everybody says this. Homosexuality is good. It's normal. You should accept it. You're a homophobe. You're a bigot if you say anything against it, right? Well, explain to me why it's good. And, or like, say, for example, that, you know, you believe that God created the earth. Like, we know better now. Science has proven there's no God. God didn't create the earth. Say to them, well, what do you believe created the earth? You know, how did it happen? Well, you know, there was a big bang and life evolved and stuff like that. Okay, so how did you come to believe that? Why do you believe that? It's a good strategy. Try it sometime. Like, how come you believe that? Well, everybody knows that. They'll tell you, you know, and it's like, it's stupid, but you should know why I believe. Well, yeah, but I mean, just explain to me. And sometimes what you want them to do is if they're explaining to you, they might actually see that, you know, I don't really know myself that much. I can't figure, I don't know why. It's what they told us in school, you know, or whatever.
Right.
And so it's like, well, think about it. You know, do you really think something came from nothing? Does that make sense to you? You know, and if you can get them to see it, it's like, well, you think I'm a nut because I believe an omnipotent, all-knowing God made it. But you, it seems to me, think nothing made it. So how's that smarter? You think nothing made it. So anyway, two-way conversation. That's one thing I wanted to show you. And the other thing is, it says that verse 4, it says that some of the Jews were persuaded, and also a large number of Greeks and prominent women and stuff. So that word's important, persuaded. And if you look that up in Greek, it's patho. And it's the root of the word for faith. The word for faith in Greek is pistis. And so this is the root of it, patho. And it means to convince by argument. And so I just wanted you to see that because, see, he persuaded them. And in other words, he brought them to faith. Because patho is the root of faith, pistis. So
What does it mean when it says, and not a few prominent women?
it's just another way of saying and a lot. Instead of saying a lot, he says, and not a few. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, and not a few. There's a lot.
So that meant, yeah, I found that confusing too. I thought,
Yeah, I didn't know whether she went along with him or she was against it.
yeah, that's what so it meant that they went along with it.
No, they went along, and see, they were persuaded. So I wanted you to see that because today a lot of people say faith is believing in something without any evidence. And that's not true at all. That's just not true. Faith is just being persuaded that the story that you're told sounds reasonable. It's actually the opposite of just believing something without evidence. He persuaded them. He showed them, look, the Old Testament predicted Messiah would go through this and this and this. Jesus of Nazareth went through this and this and this. We're witnesses of it. We're telling you this is what happened. And then people go, makes sense to me. I believe it. And actually, there's a lot to our faith like that. Not just the part about Jesus, but believing in God in general. It's like, we don't believe in God because, you know, we just want to believe. We don't have any evidence. Belief in God is just believing in something without any evidence. No, no, no. On the contrary. For centuries, Christians have given evidence why you should believe in God. I tell people all the time, just look around you. It's all designed. Like, how come my heart pumps blood? My body needs blood, and throughout all the cells, and this pump here pumps it, and it has these arteries and then veins and capillaries, and I mean, they're amazing, and it goes down to the microscopic level and carries blood to everything. If you cut me, I heal. It just heals by itself. Come on. How could you evolve a pump to pump blood? You know, you need the pump right away when the body's here. You can't have the pump develop over millions of years. I didn't have any blood for millions of years, and then I get a pump because it took millions of years to evolve little part by little part. No, I have all these systems. I have a digestive system. I have skeletal, muscular, circulatory. If you have systems, an engineer made them. A mind made them. So we look at the world and we say, you know, really the evidence shows there has to be somebody with an incredible intelligence and power who did this. And then you tell us, and yeah, you know what else? He gave us a book and he told us who he is, and he came to the Jews and he revealed himself to them, and then he came in the form of Jesus and he did these miracles to show it was really from God, and then he rose from the dead. So you present that and we go, all that is, faith is just the last little part. You have this whole long bunch of evidence, and then you just need faith for the last little part to say, so okay, so his name is God and his son is Jesus. And it's like, it's not like you're believing something without evidence. You got plenty of evidence. Everything that's ever everything that has a design to it had a designer. Every book you ever see had a writer, had an author. Not only that, these Bibles here, for instance, they had authors, but they also had a company that makes paper. There's a company that made the leather binding. There's a company that prints them up. There's a company that ships them and sells them. And we know all that. You can't have these books here just out of nothing. There's no book anywhere that came out of nothing. There's an author to it. There's a publisher. There's a printer. There's a paper maker. Whatever. All that. You look at the universe, same thing. It's like it's all designed. There's all kind of features to it that are super complicated and everything. We can predict it all. It has all these natural laws like gravity and, you know, the motion and stuff of the planets. We know where they're going to be years from now because it's all like clockwork. And there's laws of mathematics and stuff. Where'd that all come from? How come we know that 2 + 2 is 4? And if there wasn't a human being on Earth, everybody would know that. That exists out there. That's a reality. How come there's stuff like that if there's nobody to design it all? See? So anyway, I went too long on that, but just wanted to point that out. They persuaded people. So faith is just being persuaded. And it's like in the early days, they went to these Jews. The Jews already had all this knowledge of what God had done with all the history of Israel and all the promises he made. And then, so they went to them and they said, look, these promises have been fulfilled. And it happened in Israel. And remember, there's always ships traveling and merchants and stuff. So even though it's the ancient world, they get communication. So people have come through and told them about John the Baptist. I mean, you know, the events in Israel were spread around. People knew about it. So they've been hearing this stuff. And then Paul just comes and tells them, hey, it's Yeshua. He's the Messiah. So they think about it and they go, they're persuaded. That's what faith is. They say, I'm going to be a messianic believer. I'm going to believe this new addition to Judaism. Because remember, Judaism is the root and the trunk, and Christianity is the branches. We're the fulfillment of Judaism. Jesus is the fulfillment of all the messianic prophecies. So let's go to verse 5. But, there's always a but. But the Jews were jealous because a lot of people liked this new message, see? So they're jealous. So what they do, they rounded up some bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. That sounds like Antifa. That sounds like BLM. You go and get some troublemakers, some drug addicts, some people who like violence, some people that hang out, they're homeless and everything. Stir them up, give them some bricks to throw, give them Molotov cocktails, and cause a riot. That's a real good, wholesome plan, right? That's what they did, though. Here they are. You'd have thought they'd have thought to themselves, hey, you know, we're God's people, the Jews. We don't do things like this. Like people always say, you know, if President Trump wins, boy, there's going to be riots in the street. Well, there have been riots in the street ever since he won before, but it wasn't our people who did it. It's your people. You guys are rioting. Anyway, I can't go into that direction. So, but look how they did. Things haven't changed. They stir up a mob. They want to get rid of these guys. So they rush this guy, Jason. They don't tell us who he is, but he's just some guy who, I guess, welcomed Paul and Silas. And so they were looking for Paul and Silas. They wanted to bring them out to the crowd. They'd have killed them, but they didn't find them. And so they dragged Jason and some other brothers before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world have now come here." And Jason has welcomed them into his house. They are all defying Caesar's decrees, saying that there's another king, one called Jesus. When they heard this, the crowd and the city officials were thrown into turmoil. They were really disturbed. They were perturbed. They were angry. They were irritated. And then they made Jason and the others post bond and they let them go. So what apparently happened here is that these guys got wind of this. And so they got Paul and Silas out. That's what most commentators say. They got them out of there and hid them somewhere because they knew these people were stirring up trouble. It's bad. You know, it's getting bad. It's the way it is here now. Like I wouldn't go out in Portland, Oregon or something. They'd kill me.
I wouldn't either.
Chicago or some of these places. You don't go out amongst these people. Mob mentality is not
Somebody
good.
just came in the door.
Yeah, I heard him. Maybe he'll come over here. Anyway, he has to go to the kitchen, but if he comes in. But anyway, hello. I know we knew you were coming.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out for you.
Go right ahead. Thanks. Anyway, so notice they're jealous. So Satan really uses jealousy, doesn't he? Boy, that's how they got Jesus killed too, you know, envy and jealousy. That's how it says that Pilate knew that the Jews who wanted Jesus crucified were envious because he was getting the crowds and stuff, and they didn't like that. He's taking them away from us, and Satan uses that jealousy, man. He uses envy. He'll stir you up, and so then they do things in a really evil kind of way, getting these low life people. They stir them up to cause the riot. But Paul and Silas apparently were hidden somewhere. So they just came to the house where they knew they'd been staying, and they dragged them out before the city officials. And just a side note, it says city officials here in my version, the New International, but that's polyarchs in the Greek. And it's interesting because that's a word that they really used in this area in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. There's records. Other parts of the Roman world, they didn't call them polyarchs. So it's just kind of a little detail that lets you know that this was really written by a guy who was there, because that's a word they didn't use for city officials in most places, but that's what they called them there. And it's kind of like, what do you have? Ombudsman in New York and Massachusetts and stuff like that, right? An ombudsman.
I've heard that expression.
It's like a city official or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, different regions call officials different things. I don't know what an ombudsman is, but anyway. But there's these words. Well, that's one of these words. This is a special word. That's why this one guy named Sir William Ramsay, he studied all this, and one of the ways he became convinced that the New Testament was true is all those kind of words like that you couldn't know unless you were really from there and from the times, because that's the word they used in that period of time in that area to talk about city officials. So they really were rabble rousers. They stirred up the people. And also notice what they said. They said that the men had caused trouble all over the world. Is that really true? They didn't cause trouble anywhere. But the Jews caused trouble everywhere that the new Christian Messianic Jews came. The traditional Jews were riled up and fought them. But they said these guys were causing the trouble. What a lie! Again, I don't want to make you mad and go too political here, but just I watch certain kinds of news, and the things I think of, that's what's in my mind. So, for example, to me, they're always saying Trump has brought division to our country. To me, the division was here long before he started. We had tremendous division under Obama. We've had tremendous division for some time. And so you blame him for division. And you blame him for what you actually do. Spread hate and stuff like that. They call Christians haters. And they said that these men had caused trouble all over the world. It's absolutely the opposite. They brought a message of love and peace all over the world. But look how the devil twists it. He says, you caused trouble all over the world. And Jason welcomed him into his house. And they're all defying Caesar's decree, saying there's another king. Look at that. There's truth to that. The devil always uses some truth mixed in with his lies, because nobody would listen at all if it was totally outlandish. But he uses some truth. He says, they're talking about another king. Well, they are. But Jesus himself has said to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. So the Christians are not a threat to Caesar at all. In fact, the Christian message tells you to pray for your kings and those in authority and be obedient citizens and be good citizens. And Christians should be the best citizens. They care about the country. They bring peace. It helps families for people to come to Christ. Helps the family. It makes them more peaceful. It makes them they work harder. They don't get drunk as much. They don't, you know what I mean? They don't have, God helps them overcome things that really wreck lives and families. And sure, there's hypocrites and there's people who don't live the life. But if you practice Christianity, it brings a stronger community and so forth, the last thing it does is teach you to rebel against the government. But they said this. So that's a real lie, although it has truth in it, because Christ is a king. And that's what the message of Jesus is. You've got to submit to a new king, Jesus. But he doesn't have you fight against the government. We don't do that stuff. We don't burn buildings. We don't riot. We submit. In fact, we let them kill us if they, we don't fight. And so, but look how they twist that. That's just like today. If you're in a Muslim country, all they have to do is say, these people are against Muhammad. They spoke against Muhammad, the prophet. They spoke against Allah. Oh, kill them. They're against our prophet. Kill them. People get real riled up. And back then, in this time, remember, the Caesars a lot of them were real paranoid. And because they had good reason to be. Because if you're the emperor of the world, there's always people gunning for you. They want to kill you. They want to overthrow. They want to rebel. So the Caesars were pretty paranoid. So if you say to the officials and all, hey, these guys are against Caesar, they're saying there's another king, another emperor, not Caesar. If the Caesar gets wind of that, he'll crush these people. And later on, there's going to be great persecution of Christians for things like that. Like different Caesars said, everyone has to offer incense on the altar to Caesar. And the reason they did it was because they wanted people to be loyal to the government. And they wanted, they thought it would kind of unify the empire. Everybody should be for Caesar. So everybody has to burn incense to Caesar and say he's a god. So all the people did that, but the Christians said, we can't do that. We can't say he's a god. There's only one God. And they got killed for it. So this is a real wicked thing they're doing here, saying that these guys are defying Caesar's decrees and saying there's another king. They want to get them. They want to get the government against them. So it's, sedition. You spoke against the government. Have you noticed that Google now and Facebook and Twitter, if you speak against the party that they're for, they shut you out. Yeah. You can't there's a story now about Biden's son and all in the New York Post. Twitter, Facebook, and Google shut it out yesterday. We're not going to allow it to be even heard. Well, look. You didn't do that about the false Russia hoax. That went on for 3 years. You guys spread all of that. You didn't say that was dangerous. It was misinformation. It was a lie, even though a whole bunch of it was false. Because it's for your side. So you broadcast it. But if somebody says something contrary to your side, you say that's dangerous. It's fake news. We got to shut it down. That's what we got nowadays. Still, man, nothing has changed. It's wicked today. We got a really dangerous situation. So also just want you to notice that always when the gospel goes out, there are some who believe it and there are some who just won't. They won't. And so for different reasons, they won't. And that's just normal. We got to get used to that and just understand that that's what's happening. And they said these guys were turning the world upside down. They're not. They're turning the world right side up. It's just amazing to me. I get real frustrated, and I shouldn't, because I guess it's always been this way. And don't freak out. I mean, the devil always says the darkness is light and the light is darkness. And so I shouldn't be surprised if they say, you people are homophobes, you're haters, you're against everything, you're bringing division. Did you guys see the Catholic priest I put on Facebook yesterday?
I didn't see it.
Somebody put it and I shared it. It's a Catholic priest. He gave a talk. He gave his homily, I guess, last Sunday. I don't usually stand for the Catholics, but or agree with the Catholics. But what he says in that speech is really good, really good. 5 things that all Catholics should know about Catholic Joe Biden. 5 things, and he goes through these 5 things, and it's like, wow. So, when people I don't agree with the Catholic Church, but when they say things that are right, I got to stand with them. I'd rather be with them than with the atheists, that's for sure. We're Christians. We still believe in Jesus. You know what I mean? Okay, let's go on. Verse 10. As soon as it was night, so they hid him somewhere, right? And then when it was night, the brothers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. And You know, if you look on the map, they went to Amphipolis and Apollonia, and then Thessalonica, and then Berea. And so on arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. These guys are gluttons for punishment. They never give up, man. They're always being attacked. They just keep right on going. They go to the Jewish synagogue, just like before. Now the Bereans, this is a real famous scripture here. You'll hear this mentioned all the time. The Bereans were of more noble character, and actually the Greek there says eugenes, which means of good genes. They were of good genes. They were of better character than the Thessalonians. For they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. So this is famous, and you'll see like the Assemblies of God had the Berean Bible Institute on that you could take courses to get prepared to be a minister. It's called Berean. They don't do it anymore, but you'll see Berean Bible Institute, Berean this, Berean that, Berean church, because people, the idea is, look at what these people were like. They were of noble character. They listened to the apostles' message, and they examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul was saying was true. So they were open-minded, and they were eager to hear. But they did examine scripture, and that's what we're supposed to do. Don't just believe everything anybody tells you. Look in the Bible. But if what the people are telling you is in line with the Bible, then it's good. So verse 12 says, many of the Jews believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. So this time, a lot of Jews came to faith. They accepted it. They saw that it was from the Scripture. So, we have to believe it. If we're Jews, we believe the Scripture. Remember, there's no New Testament. So this is all Old Testament. They're looking at the Old Testament when Paul preaches Messiah to them from the Old Testament. They're believing it. And so a lot of them did. Verse 13. But when the Jews in Thessalonica learned that Paul was preaching the word of God at Berea, they went there too, agitating the crowds and stirring them up. So they were just as relentless. Of course, Paul was that way, so he understood them, because remember, he was relentless. He went around arresting everybody and trying to stop Christianity. And that's what these people did. They went there and agitated the crowds and stirred them up. Verse 14, the brothers immediately sent Paul to the coast, but Silas and Timothy stayed at Berea. And the men who escorted Paul brought him on down to Athens, and then left with instructions for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible. So you see, he always traveled. He didn't travel alone. We know he was with Silas, but he also had others with him, Timothy and others. He had a team. He always worked with a team. So you go to Berea, it's up here, and then he went on down to Athens. It's a ways down. You sail along the coast. They put him on a ship, probably brought him down there, and they had to slip away at night. And so, he got down to Athens. He escaped from all this rabble-rousing that these people were doing. And probably the Christians said, he's the leader. Let's get him out of here. We got to protect him. It's like you protect the president, Let's get him out of there. Timothy and Silas stayed behind because they were going to help the people who had accepted the Messiah. But Paul went on. So let's see. It's about time. We got to quit pretty soon. But let's go into the next section, and then we'll quit. Verse 16. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned, there's that word again, in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks. So first he went to the synagogue, like he always did, to talk to Jews and God-fearing Greeks, the ones who weren't full Jews, but they liked it there at the synagogue, and they were open. But he also went to the marketplace day by day and talked there. He reasoned with the people who happened to be there. So this is another thing we always talk about nowadays, that we need to be out in the marketplaces of the world and share the gospel. So today it's social media. Get out there on social media. Plus, go to the colleges, go wherever you can, and wherever people will let you talk, go out there and share the gospel with them. So that's what he was doing. He was very active. He didn't just sit around waiting for Timothy and Silas. he got busy, went to the synagogue and also to the marketplace. Verse 18, a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with him. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we want to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. So, very interesting here. He goes to Athens, and the first thing I want you to notice is that he's distressed that the city's full of idols. Remember, these guys, man, they worshipped all the gods. You know, they had the Parthenon, all the gods, you know, Zeus, Apollos, Hermes, you know, Poseidon, all those different Greek gods. Plus they had many other gods. They had lots of different gods because it was an international kind of city. A lot of people came and went. If they had other gods from another part of the world, hey, bring your gods. You know, you can worship them here too. Make an altar to them and so forth. And they had this this altar to an unknown god, or some say that it actually said to any unknown gods. So the idea was we cover all the bases. You know, we offer sacrifices to any of the gods because you don't want to make them mad. You want them to help you out, and so whatever, you know, whatever gods there might be. I think whatever gods may be, there's some famous poem that says that, you know. So it's full of idolatry. So listen, this is the thing that's interesting. Athens, remember, was like one of the most honored cities of ancient history. Like everybody knows about Athens. That's where all the, you know, Plato, Socrates, Plato, and then Aristotle came there, and the great philosophers, great thinkers, sort of the foundation of Western civilization came out of the Greeks there, you know, and democracy kind of got a start there, and just so many things that we honor about the Greeks. And we think highly of the Greeks. And of course, our New Testament was written in Greek, and I'm studying a philosophy course right now online, Greek philosophy, because it's really, really, so it's good. The Christian theologians, they took Greek philosophy and they used it to present the gospel and to think about things. And so St. Augustine he believed in what Plato taught. And Thomas Aquinas, he believed in what Aristotle taught. And so they taught Greek philosophy and all. But the interesting thing is, with all their brilliance, the Greeks, you know, I think it was Tertullian, the church father, he said, what communion or what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? Nothing. We have nothing in common, because Athens is all this brilliant human philosophy, but they got just all kind of gods, and they're idolaters. And Jerusalem is the place where they worship the true God. And so he's distressed to see all the idolatry. And but yet people praise Athens. What a great city. And people praise Rome. You know, Rome is great. And I've been there and I've seen all the different buildings, the ruins and everything. It's very cool. But God called Rome a beast. Rome is the beast. You know, they were horrible. They crushed people. They were brutal to people. They crucified people. They crucified the Messiah. Greece, same thing. They're idolaters. They're filled with wickedness, iniquity. Yeah. They're great philosophers and everything. But what good did it do them? It didn't bring them to God. It brought them to just idolatry. And there were all kind of philosophers there. So in verse 18, he encountered these two different kinds of philosophers of the time, Epicureans and Stoics. Now today, we have a different notion of what these guys believed, but if you study what they actually taught and everything, it's not quite the same as what people think today. When you think of Epicurean, what do you think of today? Anybody ever heard of that before? Epicurean. Like if you go to, say you go on a cruise and they have terrific spreads of food, right? They'll say this cruise has all the greatest Epicurean delights. So when you think of Epicurean, you think of like pleasure. Great food, great pleasures of life, right? And so, yeah, but actually the Epicureans were into moderation, you know, pleasure, but not just all kind of wild parties or anything. Just avoid pain, seek good in life, seek to have a good life. And when you think of a Stoic, what do you think of? You think of somebody they don't show any emotion, they don't respond to pain, they don't respond to joy. They are just stoic. Well, yeah, and so that's what we think about. But actually, they were philosophers, and they kind of believed in what the Indians believe, that God is everything. There's like a world soul and stuff. So they were not just all wild partiers or all just didn't have any pleasure at all. It wasn't quite like that. But the thing is that they were different philosophers that were popular. The founders of them you can read about and stuff like that. And but the thing is here, when you go out into the world, you're going to encounter the philosophies of the day. What do our people believe today? Like our people have philosophies today. You go out there and a lot of people just believe in science, or they believe that only the physical is real. You know, some of our people today are into the New Age or Hinduism. They like that. A lot of our people like Eastern stuff nowadays. They practice yoga. They go to some Buddhist lecture, you know, or some Hindu thing. I was in Colorado. If you go to Colorado, man, wherever there's a lot of real modern kind of thinkers, everywhere you go, I was in Boulder, Colorado. It's a university town. Everywhere you go, you see these posters advertising this Swami is going to speak, or this Buddhist guy, Zen Buddhist guy, or, you know, this Hindu person, or, you know, yoga, transcendental.
Bring your own pot.
Yeah. Bring your own mushrooms, you know, all that stuff. Like, they're really into it. In a lot of places in our country, they're into all that. Eastern religion, meditation, you know, all that kind of stuff, acupuncture. And then, but the thing is, there's all these different philosophies. What's your philosophy? What do you think? What do you believe in? You know, and we have to interact with that. And we have to find out where they're at so that we can then share with them where we're at, what Christ says. Notice it says, some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? The word there in Greek is seed picker. What's this seed picker trying to say? And the idea of a seed picker, it's a little bird, and there's like, you know, people eat and all, and then they throw their trash, and the little birds come and pick at all the trash. Like maybe you threw an apple and it's got some seeds, and they pick at it, and, you know, there's a kiwi or whatever, different seeds, and, you know, it's picking at it. So the idea is that this is a guy who just kind of goes around and takes a little of this and a little of that from different religions, and he's like trying to sell. He's like a huckster. He's out there trying to sell some new religion, you know. He picks at this and picks at that and shares all these crazy ideas, and the people go for it. You know, what's this guy trying to say? He's advocating foreign gods. Did you know why they killed Socrates? Socrates was what, 400 or 500 years before this? I can't remember. 400 and some, I think. They killed Socrates, remember, in Athens. They made him drink hemlock, poison. They killed him, and Plato wrote about it. Why did they kill him? They said he was advocating foreign gods, or getting rid of the gods. He had new gods. He had different gods. He was corrupting the youth and advocating new gods. This is a serious charge back then. They killed Socrates for it. Now they're saying that's what this guy's doing, Paul. He's a babbler. He's picking at seeds, and he's just sharing different crazy ideas, you know. And they said to him, verse 20, you know, we want to know what you're talking about. You're presenting some strange ideas, and we want to know what they mean. And see, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. So they were famous for that. They were just people who, it's good to talk about the latest ideas, but actually, as you'll see, they got to the place where they don't really do anything useful. They're just constantly talking about new ideas, but they're not going to apply them. They're not going to do them. They're not, you know what I mean? They're just talkers. And so this is the group that he comes to, and this is what they say about him. And so he's interacting with them. He's reasoning with them. He's dealing with the Jews, and he's dealing with the pagans. And next time we'll come back and we'll see what they invite him to come to the Areopagus. That's Mars Hill, the god Mars, right? And so there was a council, city council met there. The Areopagites met on the Areopagus, and they decided government issues and also judged crimes and things like that. So it's an important group in the city. You might say it's kind of like the intellectuals or the elites of the city. And so they gave him this invitation. Why don't you come and talk to us? We want to hear what it is you're saying, because they like just discussing all kind of new things. So next time we'll look at what he says to them there. And you'll see this is one of the most important speeches in the New Testament, where Paul talks to a more pagan audience. They're not Jews. They're non-Jews. They're believers in other gods and so forth. And we're going to see how he presents the gospel to them.